One of the best performers in the past summer and a, of course, favorite as well, Solana has once again initiated one of the more critical signals that we have been looking for, as I do want to follow up since the last time that we spoke about it. With that said, welcome back to EllioTrades channel. I'm host Krown again today, and we're going to go over some good old TA with Solana, as the intro does suggest. And so we spoke about this at the end of a video, I believe it was about a week and a half ago now. And we said that, the setup is there, but probably needs a little bit more time, maybe a week or two, of which now we are starting to see it come to fruition. So with that said, we do have our first etchings of a major, in this case, actually macro breakout, which is looking like it very likely will lead towards more long-term continuation. So first and foremost, I kind of want to go over what we spoke about, and that was this, actually in reference to yesterday's video as well. One of my most favorite things happened. What do we see right here? We see a series of higher low, boom, 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 and this actually does have a technical name as well. It is an ascending triangle, a bullish reaccumulation formation, with a resolution on the daily above 180, as we spoke about on the prior video. With that in mind, the target was around the prior high for the first target. However, I am not saying that things are going to stop there for forever. In fact, because this is very likely leading into some other higher term timeframes, we can very likely extend targets for the long term. So I want to be very deliberately clear here. We are going to be talking about the next, maybe 2 to 3 months to come in this case. We will go over invalidation points as well, obviously, and then maybe a very small amount of the shorter term timeframes if time does allow. So with that in mind, because we do have an ascending triangle right here, your technical target is going to be basically where high already is. Kind of already hit this one, obviously. But do I think that things will stop there? Well, in this case, very unlikely. What you'll also notice is I have several of these vertical bars here. What do they represent? They represent every time where daily volatility has been incredibly low. What I'll bring you over to now is this pane over here. And you can see I've marked off some very specific ones. These ones all correlate with upside moves because, well, we were looking at uptrends and we were looking at upwards momentum. And I believe that that's what we're seeing right now as well. Volatility obviously being direction neutral, but we can start to look at, trend and momentum to further sort of give us a verification on where this one is likely going to resolve. And in this case right here, I should probably re-explain volatility. It's the dispersion of returns. And this particular indicator is the Bollinger Band width percentile. Essentially what it is the Bollinger Bands. It's a measurement of the Bollinger Band width, which is a volatility-based indicator. And then we've ranked that into statistical format to give a percentile function on this. And what have we seen in the past? Actually, something very specific right here. So there's been 2 times where we've had volatility this low on the daily specifically being resolved to the upside. So multiple things on that one. And what is it? What have been the historical results thus far? Albeit we do only have 2 of them, just for what it's worth, but relevant nonetheless. Well, the first time was in March of 2021. That led into a little bit more of a a gain of about 400+%. Not bad, definitely not bad. Then the next big one was from April to July consolidation being resolved right here. And from low to high, an interesting number, very interesting number. This was about 733% gainer. Now, I do want to highlight the fact that almost, I wouldn't say immediately, but over the next, looks like about 4 weeks, it did put in a move of about 250%. So that first sort of jump up, very similar right there in percentage gains. This one, however, I would say this particular instance right here is a lot more similar to what we have going on over right here. Remember the discussion that we had about essentially Wyckoff, cause and effect. Cause is what is built up during particularly a consolidation phase, which is what you're doing between this point and this point, as it essentially is resolving itself after that beautiful move to the upside, similar to what we have over here, trading it sideways within a range. And the longer that cause builds up, typically the bigger effect. And in this case right here, the last iteration was a lot more similar to what we're looking at right now, going from May, I would say about late May, so we can maybe even say June, being resolved in basically beginning of August. So what is that, 2 months about? A little bit over 2 months. And what do we have over here? This one starting in early September, going all the way into just about the late October regions right here, little bit less, so I wouldn't expect the exact same, or you can't really expect the exact same results to begin with, but I would expect a little bit of a lesser effect to begin with. But still, that first leg up, very impressive. And while we have had a nice move thus far, I do suspect that this one will continue on the macro scale here. So again, I want to reiterate, we are talking, more further down the road, probably looking at 2 to 3 months. As you can see right here, the last one from resolution in late July to, current all-time high is early September. So that did take a couple months right there to resolve. Okay, before we get into the general sort of targets here, I do want to point out as well that I'm essentially looking for that volatility expansion to be confirmed on the daily Bollinger Bands here as well, as long as we are closing above the top side of this on the daily specifically. And of course, other higher term timeframes are relevant as well, but this one is the one that is moving right now. And it's currently situated at 194. I'm looking at this as, well, very likely to continue onwards and upwards. That implies that volatility expansion comes with trend continuation. And like more immediately than not, as long as that condition is met. This is looking good, so to speak. And what else do we want to talk about after that? Yes, I do need to mention this. The weekly momentum. So another thing that we can kind of look at to give a general guideline of where we're at is going to be turning up on the weekly stochastic, just a momentum oscillator, nothing too special about it, getting more immediate price action usually, relevant to that time frame, of course, as well. We'll be crossing to the upside for the first time since early September. If this does close above, tomorrow, Sunday, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the price of 162. That happens, well, I'm looking for this one to continue pretty much now over the next few weeks here. Look very, very good. Okay, so that brings into the question, what sort of targets are we looking at here? Well, let's pull them up right here. Whenever we get into the topic of all-time highs, I like to pull Fibonacci extensions for the simple reason that a lot of the time during those times, it's bought in algos that are going to be, essentially doing most of the price action. And did I do it over here? Yes, indeed I did. You can see that we've already hit the first very shallow one at the 1.414. Do I think that thing stopped there? No, probably goes for the 1.618 before any sort of short-term reconsolidation. That's just above our current area at about 240. And sorry, if I actually did this properly, you'd notice it's also directly in line with the measured move off of this as an ascending triangle reaccumulation formation. Would be looking for some consolidation after that, and then perhaps further down the road, I would be looking at the more interesting targets, of course. The 2.618, namely, going to be around 370. And then the big ones are going to be between about 500 and 600. Now, if you recall earlier to the volatility reads and their expression within price action as far as a percentage gain, we can just see if anything fits here. So remember, on that first leg, we typically did see about a little bit over 200%, maybe between about 300% in some cases as well. So let's just see where that would put Solana right here. Well, that'd put it right around the 3 spot extension, actually. Interesting one at just below 440, actually. Doesn't need to be exact, of course, but around there would look very, very good. But as you did notice, this consolidation right here, a lot more similar to the prior one. In that case, I probably do look for it to go more over time. But here's the thing, and we will follow up on this over time as well, assuming that Elio doesn't can me. but assuming that doesn't happen, then we'll follow up on this one over time. And essentially, I would judge those next targets after this one gets above or clears the 2.618 here. That's the big one for me. That's the one that really opens up the more long-term, potentially even parabolic blow-off top targets. Again, we're talking, months down the road, realistically. And in that case, well, you can imagine that if we were to put in one of those more crazier numbers, well, actually 400% puts you at $900. Wouldn't really even be asking for too much, I suppose. Very long term. Now this could be, maybe half a year to a year down the road to be looking at $1,000. Now I did not say that. Okay, it's way too far away. I don't want to get carried away with the old hopium here, but we should now talk about invalidation, of course. Remember, any trade setup, any trade idea, and this, of course, is not finished advice, by the way, for the same friend, in fact, does have a non-zero probability to completely fail. And the importance of understanding technical analysis or any sort of analysis is to know when you are wrong. That's the true value in these sort of things. And that's really the main message that I want to be having here. So how do we know in this case right here? Well, Of course, coming back down and violating the breakout trend line, which was about 180, that sort of accumulation range right there, that would be your first major warning signal. In fact, if Solana were to do that, close a daily candlestick below, below 180, then yes, I would be looking for this one to very likely come back down to the prior range lows at 145 to 150. Something new very likely is going on there. I do not think that this whole great setup that we have in front of our face would be the one to be playing at that point. Of course, everyone's free to do what they want. That would be my interpretation of such things. Now, where would be a majorly concerning area to violate long term? Well, that's actually quite simple. Your last higher low, just around that 140 mark, actually. If Solana were to close a daily below there, not only would I say that the upside is not the most likely thing to happen, in fact, that again would be violated by below about 180, but I'd be looking for a significant downside after that, very likely. Again, we'll come back to things if that were to happen and follow up on it. And should we look at a little bit of short term right now as well? I suppose we could. Let me just grab a fresh chart over here. And let's put it on maybe a 4 hour. There we go. Bit of a short-term sideways consolidation after pretty much retesting the prior all-time high. That's completely fine. I remain essentially short-term bullish on it. Actually, in this case, we could be a little bit more aggressive, I suppose, as long as it's above about 191.5. And I look for a resolution of this to the upside, hitting the next, I believe, 240 target it was, with a 4 hour closure, especially above about, let's call it 210, and be a little bit more conservative here. I don't think it's necessarily, it's not wise to be super aggressive during these times. I mean, the market's being very generous to begin with. But looking at 4 hour momentum oscillators, we do see hidden bullish divergence. Good. And we do see, well, volatility cooling off here. So a bit of sideways short term. And then if you see that 210 level taken out on a 4 hour closure, I'd start to look for that next expansion to the upside, probably over the next week, maybe 2 weeks in this case. Things look more or less good here is the main message that I want to be having. And with that in mind, I do want to provide one last thing here. Yeah, we're still early in this video. One last thing, because I haven't updated on Bitcoin in a few days here, but there's one big thing I want to highlight, and that's the global leverage ratio. We are at the same levels that has essentially precipitated every major move, both bull traps and bear traps, actually. This is direction neutral, obviously. But for example, we saw these same levels in early September. We saw by the way, that was a $10,000 dump from about 53 to 40. A little bit more than that, I guess. We saw it in late July on the bear trap that we identified from about $30,000 all the way to, I mean, essentially where we're at right now. We saw the same reads in the mid-April prior all-time highs at $65,000. And we also saw this once again leading towards a massive upside move in November of the past year, actually, when Bitcoin was consolidating below its prior all-time high. So I would say that this market is very likely to get very whippy. If Bitcoin came down to $55,000, I would probably be looking for higher lows right there. That's an area of interest for myself. If that fails, we'll come back and maybe do a specific video on Bitcoin, as I think that would be warranted. But just wanted to have a quick little insight into that, because while this is direction neutral, you know, it could very easily be like a major slam down and then bring it back up, meaning like maybe down to 58 or 55, perhaps even lower than that. And then let's say Bitcoin closes back somewhere around $6,000. That would look like a good leverage washing and probably getting ready for a macro continuation. With that said, I'm going to end this video right there. I hope this one serves you well. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.